Xal'atath. For most players, she started as a creepy dagger that whispers to you while you melt faces as a shadow priest. But lore fans know there's more here. Much more. Xal'atath isn't just a weapon, she's one of Warcraft's strangest and most mysterious characters. Her history ties into the Old Gods, the Void, the Dark Irons, and maybe even the earliest days of Azeroth itself. But here's the problem, the story doesn't quite add up. Xal'atath's lore is riddled with inconsistencies, half-truths, and even retcons. Sometimes she's a blade, sometimes a person, sometimes she's a fragment of something greater, but sometimes she even feels like an old god. So today, we're going on a journey through her entire story. The Whispers, the Curse of Grim Batol, her freedom in battle for Azeroth, and asking the big question. Is Xal'atath one of Blizzard's greatest inconsistencies, or one of the best kept secrets? So when Xal'atath first appears in Legion, she's introduced as the Blade of the Black Empire. That name alone is loaded. The Black Empire was the era when the Old Gods ruled Azeroth before the Titans chained them. To be a weapon of that empire suggests unfathomable age and power. But what exactly is she? That's where the mystery begins. Some lore sources suggest that Xal'atath was never just a blade, but an old god itself, stripped down and bound into the dagger. Others hint she's more like a vessel, holding a fragment of an old god's essence. And yet, other interpretations paint her as something entirely unique. Not a true old god, not a weapon, but an echo of the Void given form. The manuals, the text, and the quests don't agree, and Blizzard never clarified. This is our first inconsistency. If she is an old god, then why doesn't she resemble them at all? Why is she contained in a dagger rather than a hulking monstrosity like Cthulhu or Yogg-Saron? And if she's not an old god, then how does she know as much about the Void as they do? Now, one of her strangest pieces of lore, and arguably my favourite, is her connection to Grim Batol. Tucked away in flavor text and old references is the claim that Xal'atath was present when the Dark Iron Dwarves cursed the fortress. She was the weapon wielded by Modgud. Some versions say she actively corrupted the ritual. Others suggest her whispers drove the Dark Irons to their downfall. Now here's where another really odd, quite exciting inconsistency appears, because Blizzard knows. In the expansions in which Xal'atath is present, namely the most recent one, you have the Skardrin. Now they are cursed dwarves, cursed as a result of Xal'atath's corruption. They were first present in Grim Batol when the curse occurred. But here's the thing, Grim Batol's corruption is now attributed to Deathwing and the Twilight's Hammer. So where does Xal'atath fit in? Was she there first, laying the groundwork for corruption before Deathwing arrived? Was she a catalyst? Or just another presence in the chaos? No expansion has ever followed up on this. I also have a video on it. It is just a dangling thread that Blizzard never tied together. And honestly, it makes her feel even more mysterious. Was Xal'atath always influencing key events in Azeroth's history and we just never realised it? And then the big question there, because I believe that answer is yes, the big question here is how long have Blizzard had this in writing? Because of course in Legion, Xal'atath really came into her own. The whispers were constant, sometimes sarcastic, chilling, and oddly insightful. But she'd make casual comments about old god plans, void secrets, even specific locations. She'd taunt your enemies, flatter you, and she'd drop cryptic lines that seemed like foreshadowing. And here's another, even stronger inconsistency. Some of her whispers came true. She hinted at events that played out in BFA, but others went nowhere. Were those lies? Teasers for stories Blizzard had abandoned? Or is it all part of her manipulation? The idea that you can't tell which of her words are truth, and which are bait. Now, to make matters more interesting, she often spoke about the old gods as if she was separate from them. Not one of them, but something alongside them. And that seems to contradict the theory that she's just an old god in dagger form. So which is it? A fragment? An echo? Or something else entirely? So everything does change in BFA, because after years of whispers, Xal'atath finally escapes her prison. Through a series of quests, she tricks the player into empowering her dagger, and then, in a shocking twist, Xal'atath himself releases her from the blade. And suddenly she's walking free, independent, no longer a weapon, but a being of her own. And this raises massive questions. If she was always capable of being freed, why didn't she act sooner? If she was truly just an old god fragment, why would Xal'atath treat her as an equal rather than a pawn? And most confusing of all, where did she go? She simply vanishes without explanation. When we reach Dragonflight and beyond, Xal'atath stops being just a whisper in the shadows and starts rewriting the board entirely. In Dragonflight's Dawn of the Infinite, we see her tied to the Dark Heart, a relic connected to Galakrond and Titan experiments, working alongside Iridikron. But that's the thing, wasn't she freed from the dagger by Xal'atath back in BFA? And now suddenly she's tied to time travel, proto-dragon souls, and artifacts that feel like they were invented to keep her relevant. And then we move into the War Within. She takes physical form and forges an alliance with the Nerubians of Azj-Kahet, promising them dark evolution. She's also set up as a rival to Illyria Windrunner, who represents the struggle of mastering the void rather than succumbing to it. This not only creates fantastic storytelling moments, but it raises new consistencies. Is Xal'atath a body-bound being now? Or is she still an echo of something older tied to the dagger? And if the dagger held her entire essence, then what does that mean for this new walking version of her? And of course, by the time we look ahead to midnight, Blizzard is pitching her as the harbinger of the void, threatening Xal'atath, and even the Sunwell. She's not just an old god fragment anymore, she's a full-blown cosmic villain, moving relics, nations, and cosmic forces into play. And while that escalation is fantastic, it makes her harder to pin down. Is she a void emissary? An old god's remnant? Or something bigger entirely? Every expansion adds new layers, but with them come contradictions. Was her plan always this grand? Or are Blizzard writers weaving her into whatever cosmic arc they need at the time? And maybe that's the real charm of Xal'atath. She's powerful, mysterious, and impossible to fully define, because the lore itself can't decide who or what she really is. Now, I will say this, during the War Within, we did get quite a little bit of backstory, considering the Devouring War and the fact that she used to work for Dimensius. But again, I mean, it's just sort of back-to-back inconsistencies. And the biggest thing I have there is if Xal'atath was considered trapped by the old gods themselves in order to take the world soul, why on earth would Xal'atath allow the situation to unfold in BFA? The real truth is Blizzard has written her in ways that support so many different answers to these questions. And that's the heart of the inconsistency. In one story, she's clearly tied to the old gods. In another, she acts independently. In one moment, she's just a blade whispering at your side. Blizzard adds a bunch of lore to that, and it still doesn't really make sense. And then there's one that I think, unfortunately, Blizzard has kind of undercut with the new lore, which is that she's the fifth old god. Not dead or chained, but disguised. Before we wrap up, we can look at a couple of fan theories. One being that Xal'atath is a proto-old god, a failed experiment of the void bound into a weapon. Another being that she's the chosen champion of the void, meant to serve as a counterpart to Sargeras. an avatar of the cosmic shadow. This video had a lot, and I am really interested in what you guys have to say about this. Do one of these theories sound right, or was Blizzard having no plan at all and Xal'atath is just a victim of inconsistent writing? I am genuinely incredibly curious. This video was also put together using information from different points in time in order to make it feel a little bit more inconsistent and to kind of help you understand the journey in which we've gone on in this video was how the writing went on and the information came out. So I really hope you enjoyed this. This was really fun to make. Thank you so much for watching, and please do have a really lovely day.